Hello and welcome to Northgate Arinzo and Reality's Coffee Break series. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at what we call a network printer and how we configure that on a Windows based platform for use by your Reality database. So what do we really mean by a network printer or typically a despooler? Well, it's basically a remote device directly connected to the local area network. So that basically means the printer is connected via the network with its own IP address. Once you've got that IP address, you've identified the name of the device, etc., we can then begin to configure that for Reality to directly drive that printer. So some of the prerequisites, obviously you need to identify what you're going to call this printer or despooler, as it would be typically known in Reality, from that Reality environment. So are you going to call it accounting, are you going to call it printer 1, are you going to call it net printer 1, etc. You then also need to identify the name of the form queue that you're going to associate with that printer and send jobs into that form queue to be printed on that despooler. Typically I would recommend that you keep the despooler name and the form queue name exactly the same. It makes the administration really easy to deal with. So let's now take a look at how we configure a network printer for Reality. So the first part of the configuration, we're not even going to be using Reality as such to do it, and we do need to be the system administrator in order to do this, because the first part is actually going to update the registry, so you need those type of permissions to update your registry within the Windows environment. And the utility we're going to use is something called NetAdmin. So let's fire up NetAdmin, and now what we're going to do is effectively create a destination host, which is going to be our printer. So we're going to option 1, and then we're going to go into option 1 again, which is add host. So we're going to give it a name. So we're going to give it a name of my.net printer for today's purposes. It's going to ask what type of protocol we're going to use. We're going to always pick Telnet for the printer type of capability, and typically printers listen on port 9100, so unless you've configured your printer differently, you're going to supply 9100 for the port number. And then it's going to ask you for the IP address. So we're going to give it a dummy IP address for today, but in the real world you would actually give it the true IP address of the printer. And then it's going to basically display what you've supplied to the NetAdmin utility, and it's going to ask you to commit that entry if you believe it's all okay. So we're going to commit that entry. Okay, and that's all we need to do within NetAdmin. So we're going to quit out of here. You have to hit Q twice, and then you're going to be back. So now we've created the first part of the environment, which is the destination host. So now Reality knows how to connect to that printer. So now we're going to go into Reality, and we're going to start to build the configuration within this environment. So let's fire up Reality. So here we are in Reality, and we're inside our Sysman account. So the first thing we need to do as part of the configuration inside our database is to create a netdevs entry. So we'll simply edit netdevs, and we're going to give it the same name as what we defined within the NetAdmin utility. So in our case we said my.net printer. Okay, we're simply going to edit an item into here. So the first attribute is the name of the destination entry we created in that NetAdmin utility. So it's going to be my.net printer. The second attribute is going to be SHR. Now typically this is how we define a network printer, so we share it with other processes on the machine. If it wasn't shared, then Reality would hold it exclusively for its own purpose. And the last thing is it's going to be a network despooler, so we put in the word netdsp, and then we're simply going to file that record away. So that's stage 2. So now we need to create our despooler ourselves. So we're going to use the utility SPM. So we're going to use SPM. The first thing we're going to do is create our despooler. So we're going to call it the same again. We're going to keep this really, really simple. So we're going to call it MyNetPrinter. In actual fact, let's do that in lowercase. Right, we're going to change option 2 to say the NetDev's entry name. Now remember, we called that MyNetPrinter. Now notice field 9 is set to permanent. We need to change that to be shared. So we're going to share the printer. Okay, and then it gives us two more options, the hold time and the despooler sleep time. These are the number of seconds that it will hold the printer, and then the sleep time is the number of seconds it will sleep to before retrying to see if it can get hold of the printer if somebody else is using it. And then we're simply going to file that record away. And we're going to press return to come out of the despooler. So we've created our despooler. Now the last thing is we need to do is create our form queue. Okay, so we're going to create a form queue, and again, let's keep it really simple. We'll just call it the same thing again. Okay, this time we're going to go into option 16 to assign ourselves that despooler. So we're going to say add MyNetPrinter for the despooler name and a priority of 1. And then we're going to say asterisk to finish. And then again, we're just going to simply file that record away. And that's how we create our network printer or despooler. Now, so the last thing we need to do is just really start to use it. And what we need to do is just quickly start the printer. So we're going to say start -despooler, and it's MyNetPrinter. That will start it. It's now able to be used. So if I was to assign myself to the form queue, MyNetPrinter, send the job, it will come out onto my printer. And that's really as simple as it gets to create a network despooler manually. Now there is an alternative approach. So let's look at what that alternative approach is. So there is an alternative approach, and Northgate has developed a simple utility to actually do all of those 3 steps we've previously shown you in one simple operation. So the first step would be for you to download the utility using the link you can see on the screen at the moment. Once you've done that, we'll then go into Reality and we'll show you how you load that utility up and then how you use that utility. So here we are in Reality again, and we're going to now we've downloaded the file, we're now going to use that to create a utility inside our database. So I'm going to do a tDevice, give it a tape number, and I placed it in just into C, so it's netprint.rti. Then I'm going to attach myself to that tape unit. I'm going to issue a tRewind to ensure that I'm at the beginning of the tape. And then I'm simply going to say tload BP, and I'm going to use the O and the I option so you can see what's loaded. And it's loaded create.net.printer. So because this is a data basic program, we need to compile and catalog it before we can use it. So I'm going to do basic BP create.net.printer, and I'm going to catalog BP create.net.printer. Now I'm ready to use the utility. So I simply say create.net.printer. Now it's going to ask me whether I want to create the user cold start proc. Now if there isn't one already in existence, it will actually create a proc and start to add in the start despooler command, so that when Reality first fires up, it automatically starts your printers. So I'm going to say yes to this. Now it's going to ask me for the printer name I want to define. So I'm going to say, in this case, F99. It's going to ask me for its IP address. In this case, I'm just going to put in a dummy IP address. And it's going to ask me for the port number. Now remember, when we did all this manually, we discussed using port 9100, which is the default port that a printer tends to listen on. So we do that. It's now gone off and completely configured that printer. So it's created me a form queue record of F99 and a despooler called F99, or a printer called F99. So now all I would need to do is start despooler F99 and I'll be able to use that printer. Now at this point I could add another one, so let's just add another one for completeness. We'll give that one 98. Again, we'll give it a dummy IP address, 1.1.1, port number 9100, and again that's going to go off and configure everything for you. And when you've finished defining your printers, all you do is enter Q for quit, and you're back. And in this case, because I didn't have a cold start proc, it's actually said to me that I've also completed the proc setup. Now, if the cold start proc had existed, what would have been output are the lines of code that you could just then cut and paste and insert into your own cold start proc. And that's how the simpler way of creating a network printer. So we've discussed two ways of creating a network printer: manually, and it's important that you understand that process because, for instance, if you change the IP address on a printer, then you'll need to use that netadmin utility to modify the IP address respectively, and also an automatic way using a utility that Northgate has created for you. Thank you for watching this coffee break series video from Northgate. Look out for further ones coming shortly.